debacles was not enough for the participants. Instead of admitting their errors, the organizers of Durban II patted themselves on the back and hailed it as a brave step forward. But a step forward towards what? Towards a third hate fest, of course. Because if there's one thing the self-appointed defenders of human rights can't get enough of, it's camping out at five-star hotels in New York while slinging abuse at America and her allies.
That's Jason Kenney answering back to the UN's latest anti-Israel hate fest, the third Durban conference. Sometimes you think, well, the UN just does this so much, we might as well ignore it. But a bunch of people, including our immigration minister, are down there trying to do something about it. And I think this is a good thing. I'm joined now from Berlin by journalist Benjamin Weinthal. How important is it that when something like Durban 3 is happening, that somebody stands up and answers back instead of just saying, oh, there they go again?
I think it's very important. This is the third Durban Hate Fest. The first was in 2001, and many of the participants from a lot of the Jewish NGOs had to flee the event because of radical anti-Semitism, including banners promoting signs, promoting that Hitler should have finished the job. And groups following the first hate fest in 2001 decided that we need to wage resistance and counter this bottomless pit of hatred, which is being disguised as promoting human rights and fighting intolerance. And we saw some of that at the second hate fest in 2009 in Geneva, Switzerland, where groups protested Iranian despots Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's speech in Geneva and disrupted his speech. And you might have seen some of the photos of those participants wearing clown costumes to show what a mockery the Durban process has become.
Yeah, and to me this is important, because when Ahmadinejad addresses the UN, Canadian delegates refuse to even be there. Other people walk out, but when they walk out, they leave him in possession of the hall. And I must admit, though I'm normally a fan of decorum, I sometimes think Western delegates ought to put paper bags over their heads and sit there glaring at him and mocking him, not just letting him have the podium. We have another clip now, also of Jason Kenney addressing this conference and firing back fairly strongly at the participants.
It's hard to imagine a better example of the upside-down world of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. But make no mistake, this kind of cynicism and manipulation are at the root of the Durban process. In the crass anti-Semitism that erupted in the first Durban conference, it's easy to forget that the conference's original agenda didn't target Israel, but Europe and the United States. The Durban Declaration was long on calls for reparations and compensation, but short to the point of silence on the responsibility of corrupt regimes to institute free political, legal, and commercial systems.
But much as I appreciate the vigor of what Jason's saying, he says, oh, well, there's anti-Semitism, but it was originally anti-Western. It seems to me that this persistent eruption of anti-Semitism, like some terrible moral plague, is core to this process. It's not just one of the things going on. It's really at the center of what this means.
Well, the Durban Declaration from 2001, of course, singled out only one country, the only democracy in the Middle East, the State of Israel. So in some sense, the Durban process is largely about assaulting and going to great lengths to delegitimize and dismantle the Jewish democratic state. But as Jason Kenney points out, a large part of the Durban process is also insulating authoritarian Islamic regimes from criticism, particularly criticism of incorrigibly reactionary practices. Forced marriages, for example. What we're experiencing right now in Iran is a wave of executions targeting adolescents. A 17-year-old in Iran was just publicly hanged as Ahmadinejad was in New York. Although Lebanon, which is largely controlled by Iran's proxy right now, Hezbollah and Cuba and Iran went on the attack yesterday in New York City, targeting Israel again for criticism.
Yeah, they just can't seem to get away with it, and I think this is very important. Benjamin Weinthal, thanks very much for joining us from Berlin. Before we go to break, I have one more quotation that I'd like to share with the audience. You get that third board up. This comes from Eric Hoffer, philosopher of freedom. He said this after the 1967 war, and it's something that I think people should always bear in mind when Israel is being attacked. He said, "I have a premonition that will not leave me. As it goes with Israel, so will it go with all of us. Should Israel perish, the next Holocaust will be upon us." And so I would say, do not ignore the link between anti-Western sentiment and anti-Semitism. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or not. Israel's fight is the fight of everybody who loves liberty under law. We've got to take this stuff seriously, and I'm glad the Canadian government's pushing back. Now,